Well, 2024's craziest news so far is Yumeiro Cast making a return through a full game release. Now, this is crazy, and this was a news that I was not expecting. And if you have been following this franchise, you will understand how crazy this news basically is, because the franchise was barely alive for a couple of years since the game was discontinued. So what is all about this new game that Yumeiro Cast is going to release? How is it going to work, and what has happened to this franchise? Because most of you, if not all of you, have not heard many or anything about this franchise for a while. So let's talk about these and more in this episode of SEIYUU Lounge. Welcome to SEIYUU Lounge, I am your host Vanessa, and today we are going to talk about Yumeiro Cast's return with a full game, which is crazy. I've said this in the intro, but this still doesn't sound real to me because Sega is known for not managing their IP really well, let's say, and I was not expecting them for picking the game back up and deliver something to the fans or giving back to the fans after all they did to this project. So let's talk about these and more in the next couple of minutes. So stay with me if you are interested in the Yumeiro Cast franchise, or you are curious about this franchise or what happened to it. If this is not really your franchise, this episode is going to be all about them, so you may want to skip this episode. No hard feelings in here. So let's start diving into this topic. First off, you may be asking yourself, but what is Yumeiro Cast? Yumeiro Cast was a project, or is a project, that was created in 2015 by Sega in collaboration with Bandai, which is to say Lantis, and it was all about theater acting. This was way before A3 was even a thing, so they were pretty much the very first big project of the sort, let's say mixed media project, to actually tackle theater acting and mixing music in it. The project had a really unique concept at that time, and they were doing pretty well for a while, but soon things started to be weirdly managed. The project, if you do not know, features a really interesting cast. First of all, you follow the story in the game of Yumeiro Company, the theater company in which you are, in a way, interacting with those members and you are part of the story in that place. And Yumeiro Company has on vocals Ryoto Saka, Toshiki Toyonaga, Yuki Ono, Tasuku Hatanaka, Yu Hayashi, Natsuki Hanae, and Yuto Uemura. This lineup at that time was a lineup with plenty of unknowns, especially Ryoto Saka, Yu Hayashi in a way, Yuto Uemura, and Tasuku Hatanaka. They were doing some things in the music industry, they were playing around with some groups. But for example, Ryoto Saka back then wasn't necessarily part of any 2D music project, so people didn't really know why he was cast in this project, but he proved to everyone that was doubting him that he actually delivered an amazing job in this franchise, and actually he sings pretty well, so kudos to him, because people were doubting him and his quality, and he actually, in a group filled with stars, let's say Toshiki Toyonaga, Yuki Ono, and Natsuki Hanae, when it comes to power vocals, they were already 3 power vocals in here. If you count as well Tasuku Hatanaka, who is basically an amazing singer, and Yu Hayashi, you basically had a loaded group when it comes to quality. Yumeiro Company was amazing, and individually every single one of those SEIYUU had amazing songs to deliver to you. So you are following the story of Yumeiro Company, as basically you are part of that company in some way in terms of managing it, and this is a really interesting story. It's not necessarily focused on romance, but there is a romance play or a romance coming into play in this franchise, and you can actually romance some the characters in Yumeiro Company, as well as the rival theater company Genesis. And in this case, Genesis has quite possibly, and I said this a couple of episodes ago, Genesis has quite possibly one of the best lineups I've ever seen and heard in 2D music. Not because all SEIYUU are amazing as singers, but because this lineup is so unique and every single one of them fits a really unique place within the group to the point that they sound so well. It's one of those things that you need to hear to understand how amazing this group is. And when you talk about in 2015, let's say only 2 out of the 5 SEIYUU in this group were solo artists or had done solo artist work. The others hadn't, but right now they have solo careers, but at that time they didn't have, and some of them were trying to put their name in the map when it comes to 2D music projects. They were just getting their very first roles in 2D music projects. So in this case, Genesis counts with vocals by Makoto Furukawa, Soma Saito, Kenichi Suzumura, Daisuke Hirakawa, and Daiki Yamashita. Now, if you just paid attention to the names that I told you, and if you know me in some way, if you follow the episodes here at SEIYUU Lounge, you will understand that in this lineup you have 2 of my all-time favorite singers among male SEIYUU, Makoto Furukawa and Soma Saito, but you also have amazing singers in here, singers that aren't in many 2D music projects. Some of them aren't even in 2D music projects beyond one that they joined early on in their career, or that they joined in and they decided it was the only one they were going to do. But this is a lineup that is crazy. Makoto Furukawa performing low, aggressive notes. Soma Saito performing as a fa baritone. Once again, he's a tenor and he was performing as a fa baritone, so you have 2 baritones in here. Kenichi Suzumura performing really as a comfortable, he's a mix of a tenor with the baritone, so I wouldn't say necessarily one or the other. And then we have Daisuke Hirakawa, he's a bass, and you have Daiki Yamashita, he's a tenor. This lineup is amazing. You have singers with experience performing ballads like Daisuke Hirakawa and Kenichi Suzumura. And then you have singers that excel in rock music like Makoto Furukawa and Soma Saito. And then you have singers that are really emotional and can deliver highly technical performances like Daiki Yamashita. At least back then it was like this. Right now I believe that this lineup could fill, every single singer in this lineup could fill every role I just told you. Because Makoto Furukawa, Soma Saito, and Daiki Yamashita, for example, they can do everything. They are the type of singers that you want in your group, in your 2D group, because you know that they are going to deliver the best, even if the group has lackluster music or a lineup that is a bit subpar in quality. They for sure will be there shining and helping others shine, which is another thing that is really valuable. One thing also in Yumeiro Company, now that we are talking about singers that are really valuable at putting the spotlight in others, Toshiki Toyonaga and Yuki Ono usually do that as well. They are the types of singers that come forward to highlight others, which is really awesome. So, this game has 2 amazing groups in here, let's say Yumeiro Company and Genesis. They released music, yes, plenty of music, but let's say Yumeiro Company released more music than Genesis. Genesis, the characters only have 2 songs maximum each. You have an exception with Makoto Furukawa's Kuroki. Kuroki actually has 3 songs, solo songs. The other characters, some even only have 1 song to their name, as opposed to Yumeiro Company, in which most characters have plenty of songs solo-wise, some unique, some are songs that were ensemble type of songs that then they have individual versions of those. So you have that. But now that we are talking about Yumeiro Company, we need to talk about something weird that happened. So the game was launched in 2015. The game was quite amazing. People actually hailed it as an amazing stage and musical actor plus fully voiced story plus a rhythm game that was quite amazing. And let me tell you, the rhythm game was really unique. Still to this date, I haven't found a rhythm game that has the same mechanics as Yumeiro Cast had, so you have that in there. But let's dive into the next topic. So, some of you may be thinking, what happened to Yumeiro Cast? Because you are saying that Yumeiro Cast is back. There was something really odd about the way that Sega handled this IP. If you do not know, Sega is best known for their Sonic series. They have a couple of other series to their name, but they are best known for Sonic. They often dabble in games like these, mixed media games or rhythm games, but they tend to, when the game is doing well, they barely support it, and out of nowhere they start saying that the game is going to end. They usually do this. They did this to Yumeiro Cast, they did this to Ready Project, and they often give up on their games, on their IP, which is weird because if you create something, you of course want to have some revenue, of course. And knowing these types of games, people are paying to get some cards, people are paying to get some advantages in the game. This is, of course, something that is perfectly normal. These types of games, if they are free, they have to have something that you have to pay for. But I don't know how Sega didn't make any money with this game because people were actually playing this like crazy back then. But out of nowhere, they decided that the game was actually closing doors to fans in January 2019. They announced this in 2018, with the game barely into 3 years of existence, and during one of the most exciting events I was playing back then. I remember it was focused on Genesis and specifically on Soma Saito's character, so I was really interested. We're talking about Haiba, and this was an event that was pulling a lot of people into it, and out of nowhere they said, yeah, the game is going to end. The last time that you can play it is January 2019. People were livid. I was livid, so I was quite frustrated with this because it was at the time I was playing a couple of rhythm games. I believe Bandia Rose was still around, but I'm not really sure because I'm not following a script in this episode, so I need to double check it after the episode is recorded. But for sure, I had been playing Bandia Rose and I was playing Yumeiro Cast and Idolish 7, and in some way I was playing as well A3, but A3 was not a rhythm game. This wasn't necessarily the game that had the best story, mind you, the best story is with Idolish 7, but this was a game that I grew emotionally attached to really quickly, and I liked the challenge in the rhythm game mechanics because I like rhythm games. I consider myself really good in rhythm games. But when I was playing this game, well, the challenge was up and I was really excited about it, and I played it almost constantly because I really liked the challenge, even in the various difficulties that the game had available for you to choose from. And the music was really good. This wasn't cookie cutter type of music, this wasn't a happy-go-lucky type of music just for the sake of it. This was music a bit in the style of how A3 right now releases music. Music that ties up with a story or an event or a theater play that they are in charge of performing, and the songs usually tied up with that event, that theater play. This made sense. This made it really exciting because every time there was a new event, there was a new song, and you could look forward to the events instead of just playing the same event over and over again because the company no longer has any creativity to bring something really new to the table. They were making sure that each event had a new song, and that new song focused on a completely different member of a specific troupe, which was really cool. And this was something that really brought a lot of people into this franchise because not only the story was kind of cool, it wasn't necessarily the most in-depth type of story or the most emotional type of story, but it talked about the struggles with musical theater and with rival troupes and everything else that you now find, for example, in A3, so it's no longer something new, but back then it was. And they were tying this up with the performances of the songs and putting a big focus on the performances of the songs. So not only played the story, but you also played the songs that were tying up with that story, which was really cool. So yeah, the announcement was made. January 2019 was the last time that fans in Japan could play this game. Of course, there were fans internationally that were playing this game, me included, but using a sort of emulation in some way to actually have access to the APK to play the game on a smartphone outside of Japan. At the same time, a couple of months later, they announced the end of the distribution of the game, but they started selling merchandise. So this was odd, because you do not end something and then continue to try to sell merchandise to people that are angry, completely furious with you. But for Sega, this made sense. I don't know why or how, but to them, this made sense. This continues to be one of the craziest things that Sega did. they really managed to pull off something even crazier. So what did they do? They sold the license to the IP. IP is an intellectual property. In this case, Yumeiro Cast is the intellectual property, or IP. So they licensed the IP to a Chinese company. Now, all good, because if Chinese companies can pay for the games, of course they can pay for the games. All valid. But what happened here is really, really weird. So the game was alive, was taken to China, was alive in China. Chinese people could play the game, or those in China, and a Chinese games developer was in charge of localizing the game. So to have Chinese, simplified Chinese, and I don't know if he had Cantonese, but at least simplified Chinese had at least in there, and probably traditional, but not Cantonese. And what they did after that was crazy. So those in China could play the game, but the game was so strongly region locked to ensure that people, for example, like me and you, couldn't do what we were doing with the game in Japan, which was to bring the APK to our cell phones when we are not in Japan and we are actually playing the game outside of Japan when the game should only be played in Japan. Because the licensing was only done in Japan, so the game couldn't be played outside, but people were, like me and you, playing the game outside of Japan. So we were basically infringing a bit the rules to play a game that we wanted to play and wasn't necessarily licensed to international fans. But what was the big problem in here was that Chinese companies were so aware of that happening that they took measures to avoid that. And this is the craziest and probably the most stupid thing I've ever heard or read in my life. So they licensed the game to be played in China by Chinese players or those living in China, and they strongly region locked it to China to the point that only those with a Chinese social security number could play the game. Now, let's stop a bit to analyze this. Which games do you play that ask you for your social security number? Because I don't remember any. This is ridiculous. This is next level stupidity in here. But they are so obsessed with IP laws in China that they did this. So I still am baffled about this, and I remember someone talking with me about this topic. They were saying, really, I am in China and the game actually is only playable with a Chinese social security number. You can't believe how livid people are here because they do not want to put their social security number in a game. Yeah, that's crazy. China, you do you. I simply think this is crazy. Really. And if Chinese people are thinking the same, well, the game was doomed to begin with. So yeah, this was a crazy idea, but still the game thrived in China and only recently did the license return to Sega. And this is how the game that was recently announced was announced, because Sega now has the license yet again with them, and they can do whatever they want to it because they are no longer tied to the Chinese company that basically they sold the licensed IP to a couple of years back. Now that they have the license back, they are creating a game. Well, we have a new game, and this is something that is really exciting for everyone that was following this project for a long time. And if you are like me, someone that really thought that this was quite easily one of the best, let's say, rhythm games in Japan, for me it was a tie between Yumeiro Cast and Bandia Rose, you really wanted this back. You wanted this back. But how to bring this back? How to make people interested in this IP again? Quite possibly after what happened and Sega saw, or basically Sega did what they did, people were really, really angry about the way they treated this IP and treated basically their fans. I can understand shutting down a game because you are not making any money and you are paying the SEIYUU, who are really expensive, and you are paying people to create the music, Atlantis, and you are really having a lot of people involved, and you are really creating new content, you are updating the app, you are paying the SEIYUU, you are paying everyone, and then you start noticing, yeah, the money that I'm making with this app and the money that I'm spending to continue to support this app, they do not even come close. I'm losing money and people are playing the game. So in that case, I could understand Sega saying, well, we are not making any money from this game, so we decided to shut it down. But they didn't tell anyone why they were shutting the game down. So this was crazy and baffling yet again. People were really thinking, why? Really, why? this game probably was making money, but they thought it would make more money, and they saw an opportunity elsewhere and decided to ditch this IP. Sega usually does this. Just see how they ditched Yumeiro Cast to bring Ready Project, and how quickly they ditched Ready Project to dive into the next project. They do this with all their projects, it's crazy. So yeah, 2024, we are in May, and it was announced by the official Yumeiro Cast Twitter account. Yes, I'm going to continue to say Twitter because X makes no sense. Twitter account, they announced that the game was making a comeback, but in a different format. Yumeiro Cast Take a Curtain Call is the end for the game. I believe this is really, when you say a curtain call, you are saying the end. So this is a bow out for the franchise to really end in a nice or in a positive tone, which is a kind of reward to fans of the franchise. The game is going to be fully ported from its original state and transformed into a full offline game that you can play whenever you want. You need a smartphone to do that, either an iPhone or an Android phone, but you can play the game offline. This is something that for many people will be a massive plus, because something that really hindered the experience was the fact that you needed to play it online, and some people do not have data or money to pay for data outside, so they could only play at home, and sometimes they couldn't play at all. So right now you can play whenever you want, wherever you want. With the game no longer being online, some features are of course out. If you think about the game and how it was structured, for sure, without the online requirement, you won't have any events. This is something that will for sure not be in there. So maybe you have the events playable, but you won't have the timed events to play, which is a completely different thing. So maybe the events that were timed when we were playing the game back then are now in the game as non-timed. So you can play those whenever you want, you can repeat those whenever you want, and how many times you want, which is kind of cool. You have that. This is a massive plus, I believe, for anyone playing a game. I do find that portable games for me work the best right now because I'm a busy person. I don't have as much time to be in front of my PC to play a game. And some of you may not even have the time to be in front of a PC or of a console to play a game and to have a portable game. And in this case, this game was portable to begin with. And at the same time to have a game that was already really good on smartphone, continue on smartphone, but only making it offline only is something that really puts a smile on my face because it makes things really simple and easier for fans. This game will be available, if everything goes right, on September 29, 2024. This is, I believe, Makoto Furukawa's birthday day? If I'm not wrong, let me check. Right now I'm doing live checking while I'm recording. Yes, it is Makoto Furukawa's birthday. He's going to turn 35 in that specific day, which is crazy. On a side note, I can't believe he's going to be 35, but at the same time, I'm already in my 30s too. So this is going to be released on Makoto Furukawa's birthday. This is quite interesting, and it's going to be available on Google Play and Apple App Stores. So this is going to be available for all kinds of cell phones out there, as long as your cell phone can handle the size of this game. I believe this is going to be a massive game because it's going to include all the songs, all the scenarios, and all the side stories that perhaps we don't even know which are, and it's going to include new songs, which is something that I was not expecting Sega to say. Yes, we are recording new songs because we are also celebrating the 9th anniversary of these franchise, so they wanted to actually bring new art and new music, and this is something that I believe is also a massive plus because they are not doing this just to make a quick buck. They are actually taking their time to reward their fans and to bring also new art or update the art, and at the same time bring new music to a game in which the SEIYUU perhaps no longer remember the characters they were doing here because it's been a long time. So this is another thing that is really awesome. Another interesting detail, of course, is that the game is going to be a one-time purchase. So once you purchase the game is yours to keep as long as you continue to use that platform. If you are on an iPhone, the game is yours on an Apple Store, but of course you need to pay it on Google Play if you change at least to an Android phone. At the same time, this is an archive app, which is something that Sega made sure to reinforce the idea. What do they mean with an archive app? It's basically an app that is going to include the full game as it was when it ended in January 2019, and it's going to perhaps bring the content that was cut. This is me just speculating in this part, because it's not confirmed, but it was really clear in the game that there was more story to it. Don't know if they are going to develop that story, especially from Genesis side, but it seemed that there was more story coming. We don't know if that story had ever been recorded, created, or whatever, and for sure we do not know if that is even going to be an added plus to the game. So this is me just speculating about if there's going to be an extra type of content in here. At the same time, we have the 9th anniversary in here, and Sega of course confirmed that they are producing new songs alongside Lantis and creating original main visuals for this game. So we are going to have a new key visual for this game specifically. So this is really kind of cool to bring in here. It's worth mentioning that it was perhaps, and I'm going to say this with a 99% confidence, that it was Makoto Furukawa's performances here as Kuroki with Genesis that actually made him get a solo debut with Lantis. Lantis was already tied to this project. Makoto Furukawa was really singing his heart out in this project, and quickly I believe Lantis saw the talent in him and brought him along to their label. This is me, of course, speculating yet again, but I believe that this is something that quite possibly is a big reason why Makoto Furukawa made a solo debut with Lantis. It was because of his performances with Yumeiro Cast. At the same time, one thing that is worth mentioning. In case you haven't noticed, Makoto Furukawa last year held his first live show with a live audience. And in his live show he performed Hikaru Hikari Hikaru, and this song is actually one of Kuroki's solo songs. So I thought, well, this is crazy. Why is he picking back up a song from a character song, and especially from a project that is supposedly dead, to a live show when he could have brought any other song from any other project in which he actually is a part of, and he's part of another project, Atlantis. It's the Side M project, so he's part of Cafe Parade, so he could have brought one solo song from there, and the songs actually would fit his live show, I would say, a bit more than Kuroki's songs. So this for me raised a flag, and I was really sure that something was brewing in the background for Yumeiro Cast, because you do not have a SEIYUU bringing a character song from a project that is supposedly dead to the spotlight. And this once again reinforces the idea that it was actually his performance as Kuroki here in the Yumeiro Cast that gave Makoto Furukawa his chance to become a solo artist. So this was kind of him giving back, and for me it was a confirmation that this was actually the project that opened the doors for him to become a solo artist, not necessarily his performances with Cafe Parade, which may have helped, or with other projects such as the Tsuki Pro franchise as part of Sawara, but back then in 2015 he didn't sing with Sawara. The two main vocalists in Sawara were Toshiki Toyonaga and Yuki Ono, so basically he wasn't singing. So it seems that this was the project that actually put Makoto Furukawa out there as a solo artist. So this is a kind of neat detail and an extra information that you actually didn't know about, and that actually makes a lot of sense, even if it isn't confirmed, let's say this. We have a new game coming, Yumeiro Cast Take a Curtain Call. It arrives in September 29, 2024, and this is going to be amazing. I'm really looking forward to it. And we've talked extensively about Yumeiro Cast and how the project is back with Take a Curtain Call, a smartphone game that is going to be available on Apple phones and Android phones as well on September 29th, 2024. Let's say that this isn't necessarily the very first time that a game that was discontinued ends up getting a full release on smartphone, because B Project did that first. But this is the very first time that a project, I should say, that was ended too soon gets a chance of getting a second life. And given how the project was so short-lived, the project was alive for, let's say, 4 years, and we are stretching things because the project only had 3 years when it was announced the end of the distribution. and it's now celebrating its 9th anniversary. Of course, for those that were following the project on Twitter, they were getting updates here and there when there were birthdays and when Sega needed to sell merchandise, but beyond that there was barely anything. And those in China, well, they had to deal with a game that wanted a social security number, so this is still something that goes to the list of crazy things I didn't believe would happen in 2D music franchises. So yeah, you have that. I'm quite excited about these, and especially because, as I've said in the episode about Genesis, I feel that Genesis was not well treated in this franchise. They didn't get much time in the spotlight because they arrived quite late into the franchise, and when they arrived they had a really short-lived presence because the project ended soon after. So they didn't have many songs to their name. Firstly, they only had 2 songs as a group, and some of the characters only have 1 solo song. Others have 2 or 3, but it depends really. And I feel that they deserved more music, and if we are getting more music, for starters, I'm going to now have a brief rant because I'm really a massive fan of Soma Saito. I'm really excited to hear him perform in full baritone again. He has had instances in which he has performed with a full baritone-ish style, but it wasn't for long stretches in a song. So here, as Haiba, is going to perform in a full baritone tone from start to finish, and I'm so excited about this, especially him paired up with Makoto Furukawa yet again. This is crazy. At the same time, it's another opportunity to listen to Daisuke Hirakawa. He's an amazing singer, once again extremely underrated. He's a powerhouse in this group. He has a voice that really stands out a lot, and for all the good reasons. So this is another opportunity for you to get more performances if there is more music by Genesis. Let's assume that there is, by Daisuke Hirakawa. This is going to be really good, and for me, I believe that this group deserved more chances to shine. I would love for example, the Yumeiro Cast franchise to say, let's hold a last live show and let's bring Yumeiro Cast and Genesis on stage. I just want that. I just want Tears for Fears to be performed live, or Phantom Rain. I just want those songs to be performed live for the very first time, and let's say for the last time. I want that, and I'm craving that. So I would love for that to happen later on in the year. That would be even more massive than the announcement of the game release, but that's me as a massive geek about Genesis, and especially about Makoto Furukawa and Soma Saito. But yeah, I'm really excited about these. We have new music coming, we have new visuals, we have a game dropping in September. We have a lot to celebrate in this 9th anniversary of the franchise. This is a franchise that I hold really dear to me. Their music was really awesome. I was in a really odd place when this game was released, and I started playing this game almost as a comfort game for me. So this is a really special 2D music project. Not only because I have some of my favorite seiyus in here, and especially singers among male seiyuu, Toshiki Toyonaga, Soma Saito, Makoto Furukawa, and even Natsuki Hanae, but there's also this component that this is held so dear to me because it comes, or I was playing this game in a really odd time for me, and this was my comfort game. This was all about Yumeiro Cast's Take a Curtain Call, the game that is going to drop in September 29. This is one, I should say, long-awaited release for fans of the franchise, waiting for something to move, something to happen in this franchise, and finally something happens. This is the rare story of a happy ending for a franchise, and especially for fans of the franchise. So I'm really happy. Let's say for me, and of course for you, to get this chance to play this game again and visit and revisit those stories. And for those of you that are finding this for the very first time, if you find the concept and the songs interesting, you can find those online. You have to check, of course. If you find this interesting, do give a chance to this game and pay for it. Because if they are going to release this game and no one pays for it, it's going to be messed up. It's going to be really messed up, because this is the last chance that people have at showing Sega that they made the wrong call by canceling this game. So go out there if you have money and purchase the game when it drops. We do not know how much it's going to cost. I believe it will be around 50 to 60 euros. You have to convert that to your local currency. but I believe it will be around that because you have to pay for the whole game, the whole songs, and the events, and so on and so forth. So for a smartphone, it's not a reasonable price, but I believe that's going to be close to that price, because seeing as the price that B Project's game had, this is going to be close to that. I believe, at least. This was all from me about Yumeiro Cast's Take a Curtain Call. I hope you are excited about this game, and let me know in the comments if you are excited about this game and the return of the Yumeiro Cast company and Genesis to the spotlight at the same time. Which is the game or the franchise that you would love to have back, with maybe a release like this, a game released to play offline, or really back releasing music? Let me know in the comments below. And if you are on a streaming platform, do give a follow to this podcast and share it with everyone you know that may enjoy male SEIYUU artists and 2D groups. Of course, if you are on YouTube, give a like and subscribe in here, because it helps growing this channel and getting to more people. And of course, thank you very much for watching or listening to this episode, and I'll see you guys soon.